Berry, I'm so excited to have you here. When we go into being ambitious women and we're looking to achieve our goals, I think that so often we focus on this like spreadsheet or map. I'm 100% guilty of the goals that we want to go achieve, the experiences we want to have with our family, these things we want to do. And we so often don't take a step back and go, okay, how do I need to feel and who do I need to be in order to do those things, in order to be able to show up for my family? And we then will look at maybe like our weight or how far we can run and our health in these different ways. And we don't actually look at like the inside and our hormones and some of the things that we don't necessarily have control over 100%, but we have to learn how to navigate and how to make the best of our ability. So I want to kind of just start big picture overall, hormone health. How did you get started? And for someone that's listening and is like, I mean, I know I have hormones, but what do you mean hormone health? How would you kind of talk through that?
Well, first, thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here. And second, here's how I got started. I was solving my own problem. I remember I was recording a podcast with someone, and the girl on the podcast, she was like, yeah, periods shouldn't be painful. I was like, what? Like, I've had a period for 12 years. What do you mean they shouldn't be painful? Because it was the first time in my life I had ever heard that like statement, periods shouldn't be painful. So that kind of took me down the rabbit hole of trial and error. At the time when I started, I was already a personal trainer, already a functional nutritionist. So to hear someone say something so contrary to everything I deeply believed, I was like, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to fix this. And that was January of 2019. I had my first pain-free period in February of 2019. And I've literally been carrying this torch for periods are normal, pain shouldn't be, for such a long time. Now, obviously, lots of time has elapsed since then. And so I have grown my knowledge base, kind of evolved as an entrepreneur. And, when you ask me, what are hormones? It is simply the chemical messengers of the body. They are the ones doing the talking. They are telling our body what it needs more of, less of, and it's doing all of the communicating. That is the basics of your hormones. Is that
Yeah,
answer?
yeah. And, it's interesting because I'm thinking about, I feel like I've been pretty lucky with my periods, but I have friends and family members that have definitely experienced like excruciating pain. They can't even get up out of bed. And I can hear some of those people that if I were to go to say this to right now, they would be like, no, 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 I'm different. I have this thing going on, or I have this. So what would you say to someone just like before we dive in that's maybe already thinking that we can help them come along if they're thinking, this wouldn't work for me because of XYZ?
Well, I think the first thing is, whether or not, if not you're right or wrong, the answer is yes. What you believe is what's ultimately going to come true. And I have heard countless stories of people having painful periods, from endometriosis to PCOS to like everything under the sun. I have truly heard it all. And when I say you really can have a pain-free period, you can, but also know that there is a spectrum. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone like me who had really, really bad cramps, it only took me 30 days to transform my cycle. But if someone has, let's say, endometriosis, I wouldn't tell her it's only going to take 30 days to transform her cycle. Actually, it's probably going to take a lot longer because there's a lot more at play in the body than just, let's say, hormonal imbalance. There's a lot of autoimmune related things going on. So I think you have to realize that this is kind of like an onion, and it's like layer by layer. But I'm also someone that loves to give tangible tips. Can I give some really quick?
Yes, please. Always.
Right, listen up. Girls, start drinking red raspberry leaf tea almost every single day, 8 to 12 ounces if you have a painful period. Do it for 30 days and tell me your period is like not painful. Like there is so much power in herbs that we don't really realize in our society. And I'm not saying that from this like woo-woo perspective. It's like traditional Chinese medicine, top tier. Red raspberry leaf tea is about $5 or $6 at your local grocery store. Grab it, drink it every single day, and watch the pain decrease because it helps to strengthen and tone the muscles of the uterus. It also helps to decrease prostaglandins, which are often associated with cramping. The second thing, following an anti-inflammatory diet. I know you've heard it once. I'm going to say it again because we're not going to ever stop saying it. This helps decrease inflammation in the body. When you have a very inflamed body, you often have an extremely painful period. If you can decrease the inflammation in the body, then you can have a better period. Period.
Yeah. So for someone that isn't familiar with like a diet like that, what are some top foods to avoid and some top like go-tos?
Okay, so your non-negotiables are always going to be protein, healthy fat, and fiber at every single meal. That's just, it's in terms of what to avoid. People hate when I say this, but like our favorite Starbies is filled with sugar. Okay, I love a caramel brulee latte. I love a caramel macchiato filled with sugar. Okay,
Yeah.
so decrease the caffeine intake, decrease the sugar intake, decrease the alcohol intake. Those three things can help decrease inflammation in the body. Now, you might be thinking, well, what do I need more of? And I will tell you, like I tell the girls on Instagram or TikTok or wherever, I want you to Roy G. Biv, just like the rainbow, your diet. So in the first phase of your cycle, which is your menstrual phase, these are the days that you're bleeding, usually days 1 through 7. You're going to focus on getting more red and orange food in your diet. And that's because often you're looking for those nutrients. And just think of it like this. Your body is releasing red. It needs more red.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's just like one way to ensure that you're getting the right nutrients in without having to think too hard. Then in the second phase of your cycle, so after your period, but pre-ovulation in the follicular phase, so days 8 through 14, you're really gonna like kind of YG it. We're going for our yellows and our green foods. You can even do this when you're ovulating. Ovulation is the third phase of your cycle. This is a phase that is literally the shortest, but we do reap a lot of benefits pre and post ovulation. I know people don't believe it, but it does. It's a thing, I promise. And we can delve into that more. But you want to be having these foods because fermented foods help the body actually detoxify estrogen, metabolize the estrogen. And when your body is properly metabolizing estrogen, it helps actually eliminate a lot of imbalances that are present that are yielding pain, low energy, hormonal acne, mood swings. Okay. And so that would be your phase 2 and 3. So your follicular and ovulatory phases. Again, you're going to go for those yellow and green foods. And then in the luteal phase. So technically just after you ovulate for about 12 days, you're going to be in the fourth phase of your cycle called the luteal phase. And this is where we're going to biv it. So we've got our blue, our indigos, and our violets. Again, these are really great for the micronutrients and minerals that are present, our vitamin E's, our vitamin A, whatever. There's so many different nutrients, iron, zinc, magnesium. But what you're really looking to do is help the body, again, get rid of the estrogen. A lot of us in our modern society and the way that we eat, our body doesn't actually metabolize estrogen efficiently. And so it's instead of exiting the body, it's re-entering our bloodstream, which is why we have like the heavy flows, why we might have migraines and all those unhappy feelings of PMS. So I hope that helps.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that was so good. And your stepchildren are similar in age to my kids, and there's this kind of phase of like fill their plate with color and get them to eat all the different colors. And that's exactly what that reminded me of. And you have a shopping guide for these different phases, right? For the mom that just wants to like plug and play, she's like, print it out, tell me what to buy, and I'll know when to eat it. Where can they access that?
So there's two places for the plug and play. Like you already know what your meal plan looks like. I have a cycle support planner that literally helps you plan your life. It's a digital planner and it literally helps you track all the different habits. It breaks down the phases, even how to be productive. I think it's like $30 on my website. It's literally called Cycle Support Planner. It's that simple. But for somebody who's like, I want to be a little bit more regimented and I need a lot more support with this, I would highly recommend my period nutrition plan. It's a 28-day meal plan, 119 pages that gives you recipes, shopping lists, And like every question you might have, it answers it.
So good. I love that. Okay, so there's heavy bleeding. What are
Mhm.
some of the other kind of red flags if someone's just like, yeah, I mean, I don't feel good, but how do I know? I always think about this like when I gave birth to my first son, and they're like, what's your pain level? 1 to 10. And I'm like, I mean, I'm in pain, but like if you cut my leg off, I'd probably be in more pain. Like, I don't know how to really quantify this. It's
Mhm.
the most pain I've been in. So if someone's sitting there and like, well, I don't know, do I have bad periods? Like, I can't tell how someone else is feeling in their period. What are some of the other red flags to know that maybe you should look into your hormones?
Your mood swings, I would argue that is the biggest one. And it's so funny I'm saying that because I feel like, little teeny people, toddlers really know how to just push a button, right? But I would say mood shifts is one of the biggest ones.
Okay.
The second would be energy levels, especially for moms. Energy. Like if you're waking up in the morning and you cannot function without your cup of coffee, you need to be looking at your hormones. Of course, heavy bleeding is like one of the ones where I'm like, yes, but also it depends on the color of the bleed. So let's say,
Okay.
for instance, your blood is like stop sign red. That's actually okay. It's you do have a heavier flow, but also that's a healthy bleed. Whereas if
Mm,
your bleed is more on the purple side, that would actually be a sign of maybe an estrogen dominance. And so you would want more fermented foods, making sure you're supporting the liver and looking at the hormones a little bit deeper. And then mood, energy, bleed, cramps. If
okay.
your cramping or bloating is so bad, like if your bloating makes you look like you're pregnant and you're not, if your cramping is so bad that you literally cannot walk or get out of bed unless you've had a painkiller, those are definitely signs you need to look into the hormones a little bit more. And before even looking into them more, I would highly recommend you change your daily habits. So I'm going to rattle off some habits for the girls because
Love
listen,
it.
I know y'all are busy, okay? Moms are busy. So every single day, take a 20-minute walk. Literally start your day with a 20-minute walk if you can. From there, eating 3 to 5 times a day. This is going to help stabilize the blood sugar levels, which will help stabilize energy levels and like your mood, which we all want, right? Especially PTA moms. I dealt with PTA last year and I was like, oh my God, this is so intense. Like, so that's the thing. And then making sure you're taking a probiotic. Now, I know a lot of people are like, do I have to take a probiotic? I 10 out of 10 recommend it to everyone across the board just because there's too many toxins in our day-to-day life and not enough support for our liver to process through those toxins. And so like that's going to save you in a great multivitamin. People always ask me the multivitamin I recommend. So depending on what your needs are, normally I go straight for minerals, and there's a drinkable multivitamin that I take from Maria Wellness. It's called the PMS Elixir. I like the one that tastes like lemonade. I'm going to recommend you do the one that tastes like lemonade. The other one reminds me, do you remember what was it called? Like Tang?
Yeah.
Yeah, the other one tastes like Tang to me, so I prefer the lemonade one,
There you go.
But those would be the habits I would recommend implementing. And then also getting into a regular sleep routine, which is really, really hard when kids are tiny and they're potty training. It's difficult, I know, but it's worth
Yeah. Yeah. I think we have to be honest with ourselves, right? I mean, for those that listen to this podcast, they've heard me preach 100 times that I'm like the night owl, but we are so much in control of our shifts and when we go to sleep and creating some of those habits. And we have to remind ourselves to care for our health. I am curious though, are these recommendations and these habits, are these really only applicable to adults, or what about our girls that are starting their cycles, our daughters? And if we're noticing that daughters are having these painful periods or they're having some of these same mood swings, like that's normal in some ways, right? Teen years and hormones
it.
and all of that you're trying to navigate. How do you know when you can start implementing some other things for your kids?
So when it comes to the nutritional side of things, I always am like, you have to trust yourself. And if you feel like
Mm-hmm.
you need to talk to like the pediatrician, do that. And that's just because like it gets really dicey with preteens in like
Yeah.
nutrition. But one thing I would encourage is fermented foods. You can always give fermented foods. Fermented foods are very similar to a probiotic, and so it can help the body metabolize estrogen. Second thing is giving them a great baseline for understanding their menstrual cycle and the phases of their cycle. There's a really great brand I came across recently called Tina. It's TEENA, and they're designed for preteens, and it helps them actually track their cycles. Like they literally just sent me the cutest little thermometer, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cute. But I would recommend utilizing a resource such as that because it helps them track their cycle.
Cool.
And preteen cycles are irregular more often than not, and that's just because the hormones are not fully developed. Fermented foods, sleeping, and then honestly, helping them prioritize who they're friends with. So I think a lot of times we as adults talk about trauma and we're very aware of like protecting our energy. But I think it's very important, especially with the rise of social media, that as a parent and specifically as a mother, you are protecting what your child is exposed to and who they're exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you have to say no to all of the friends, but maybe teaching your child that if a person's robbing them of their peace, even at 11 years old, they got to go because it's negatively impacting their nervous system, which is negatively impacting their endocrine system. I know that was like a lot. So if we need to unpack it some more, we can, but
no, I think that's so important. So how would you recommend, we have to lead by example, right? So before we can tell our 11-year-old, like, hey, Susie's not good for you and we need to figure out how to make better friends. How do you do that as a mom, as a woman? If you're sitting and you're realizing that some of your associations aren't the best associations, they're not bringing you joy, they're not allowing you to be your best self, and that in turn is impacting your nervous system, how you parent, how you're feeling in all these different areas of your cycle and everything. How do you get the confidence to really like show up for yourself?
Gosh, that is such a good question. And I have always been the boundaries kind of person. Like I grew up in a very masculine home. I have 3 older brothers and I'm the only girl, and I grew up in a military family. So for me, boundaries are like my bestie. But I think as a parent, you have to be really honest with yourself about who you're showing your children to.
Mm-hmm.
So like, maybe let's just say I'm going to use my friend April. I love my friend April, but maybe April is like a good influence for just me. But do I want April to be influencing my children?
Mm-hmm.
And if I do, what does that do to me? How is that impacting? What is she like encouraging and what is she like discouraging? I think kind of going through, for lack of better words, the chopping block with people and just being like, does this person relax my nervous system? Yeah. Yes or no? And if they're not relaxing your nervous system, first do your own work and figure out what it is. Number 2, have a conversation. Number 3, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So what are you going to choose? Yourself and your child and your future, your peace, or that person and pleasing them? And honestly, if you're a people pleaser, I'm sorry, that might not have been helpful, but it's just kind of how I process through things.
Yeah. Well, we all only have one life and we need to nurture our life without wasting time, right? What phase of our cycle is the best time to do this reflection? Where are we going to be most receptive to really looking at our association?
Well, I always say looking in your luteal phase is actually the best time to reflect because you're already looking for problems. So you can be really cutthroat in your luteal phase. Don't communicate during this phase. Just like really analyze and like journal through it. In your menstrual phase, you can actually kind of sit with it a little bit more because of how the brain changes in the menstrual phase. And you are looking for more creative ways to actually resolve issues. So in your menstrual phase, you can kind of ideate. Then once you're done with your period, that's when you communicate. And if you're like, ooh, this person has a really strong personality and I'm not feeling 100% confident to communicate, do it when you're ovulating because like no one's going to tell you no. Or if they do, it'll roll off your shoulder and it won't even like phase you as, oh, this person like felt some type of way about what I said or did.
Amazing. Okay, so we are going to be about a month into the new year when this is released. And when we have that new year energy of vibes and goals and going after everything, how can we use these 4 different sections and cycles to nurture a process that equals success, right? Because we can't just take on 12 new habits in day 1. Maybe we can in one of our phases. Maybe you'll tell me that. But overall, we typically need to take bite sizes and we need to take on one thing at a time. So what would that look like if someone has something that they really want to accomplish this year? How can they use their next cycle, the full 4 cycles, to really create a habit that this becomes a part of their lifestyle?
Okay, I'm going to give 2 examples if that's okay. And that's because
Yeah.
I'm thinking about people who are like working, but also like for professional, and then an example for personal. So if you are
Perfect.
doing this for a professional standpoint, I want you to give yourself an 8-week runway to accomplish a said goal. This is what I teach my clients in my program, literally called workflow. I teach them a format called workflow. Okay, so phase 1 of your cycle, menstruation, is ideation. Okay, so this is where you're going to literally brainstorm everything. Phase 2, your follicular phase, this is where I say creation. So this is where you're getting really detail oriented and really like specific about what needs to get done, how it needs to get done, and why it needs to get done, and when. Be like very micro with those details. I don't care how obnoxious it is, because when you're in your ovulatory phase and your early luteal phase, that's phase 3. And then technically phase 4 is the luteal phase, but like the energy right after ovulation for like 2 or 3 days is just sublime. So I always tell people execution, get it done. Take the action, batch create the content. If you're launching the program, get it done. This is like all pre-work. Then in that luteal phase, you are going to evaluate. Okay. So that just took you basically through your first 4 weeks. Then when you're on your period again, you're going to reflect and say, okay, what is still open? What loops are still open? Are there any bonuses I want to include? Are there any upgrades? Are there any trainings? Like, what else do I want to add to this? Because we're getting back into ideation again. Then you're going to flush it out when you're in week 6, which would be, again, your follicular phase again. You're going to flush it out again. And then when you get into ovulation, that's go time. That's launch time. So I take people through like a pre and post launch situation, but at a high level, that's what you would do. And then when you get to your luteal phase again, phase 4, week 8, now we're doing post launch closeout, post program closeout. What happened? Where are your numbers? Did you hit your goal? Did you miss your goal? What needed to be tweaked? What needed to be, because you get to be really critical in the details. So that's what I do professionally. That's what I teach people professionally. It just works that way. I've tried it a lot of different ways. This is like top tier. Okay. Now
I love it. So for the professional, for someone that's in a career that they don't get to like dictate when the launch is or what they have going on, I know you teach this in your program. So can you just give us a kind of overview of how, when you're not in control of the schedule or the launches, how you can apply your phases to it?
Yep. Let me give it to you. 2 for me, 2 for you. That's something I like to teach people. So you're going to have 2 phases that are really designed for you and like just reflecting and kind of more back end stuff. And then 2 phases that is really going to be externally focused in on everyone else. So phase 1, menstrual phase, that's a me phase. Back end, like this is the time where you're not talking to people. So let's say, for instance, you are a project manager and you've got so many different things you're moving, like so many different things. Or better yet, what's more relatable, project manager or teacher?
Ooh, I don't know both, but
okay,
I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with teacher because I feel like that's so different than like your other example you gave.
Yeah.
Because you have to like talk to people every day, right?
Yeah. So in the menstrual phase, when you're a teacher, I want you to think about your top 3 priorities. Obviously, teaching. But then think about all of those extra things you have to do, the lesson planning, all of that. You're going to kind of put, if you can push it to the menstrual phase, push it to the menstrual phase, or push it to the luteal phase. Okay. I know parent teacher conferences are kind of set in stone, but guess what? You know that before the school year starts. So like you can plan accordingly. Okay. So that's what I like to do is say, like, kind of pick how you want to prioritize your energy. Then when you're in that follicular and ovulatory phase, that's when you're showing up, and you're showing up in a different way. So what I've learned is sometimes you're a better communicator in your ovulatory phase. So that's when that I would recommend as a teacher, you actually teach the harder concepts. Not because you don't know or if you can do it in your luteal phase, but because you'll have more patience with your students in your ovulatory phase more often than not when you're in your luteal phase. Like your luteal phase is that phase where you're like already irritable. Why are you breathing near me? I don't want to hear your voice. Like you're already like that. So why would you teach a hard concept then? You wouldn't. You would actually utilize that during your follicular and ovulatory phase. And for people who have really rigid jobs, I want you to think about your skill set. Okay, so if your skill set is teaching, communicating, and like that's it, you're always going to be on. But the way that you're on is going to be different. Second, don't be afraid to ask for help. Do it, delete it, or delegate it. Either you're going to do it and decide you're doing it, or you're going to delete it off of your to-do list and your task list, or you're going to delegate it. You can actually delegate things to a lot of students. I delegate things to my 3.5-year-old stepdaughter all of the time. Why? Because I know she will be able to communicate things to her brother that I just don't have the patience for. I know it sounds crazy, but she does have the capacity. And I think a lot of people forget that children do have that capacity, especially with teaching. Like I talk to teachers so much. They're always like, I'm so stressed out. I'm so overwhelmed. And I'm like, time out. You have the control.
Yeah.
What do you want it to be? So I teach my teachers 2 for me, 2 for you. 2 for me being these are my phases where I get to like kind of just like scale back my energy and how I'm showing up. And the 2 for you are the 2 phases or 2 weeks, better yet, where you're showing up fully and more like confidently. Does that?
Yeah, so good. Okay, I took you off of the personal one though, so I do want you to walk us through that. So for that person that has a personal goal coming into this year and they really want to optimize these 4 cycles to hit those goals, what is your framework and example there?
Give me one of your goals. We need a tangible example because I have so many different ways to go about this.
I'm going to say that my 2, and I think that's really common in our community, and you can pick one, is either like house clutter and tidying or health and like moving your body.
I'm going to go with house clutter and tidying, and that's because the health one isn't something you can do in just 4 phases.
Yeah.
That's a true. Whole lifestyle overhaul.
Yeah.
So here's exactly how we would declutter and like spark some joy with our cleaning process, okay? So in your menstrual phase, the first thing I want you to do is write down everything you hate looking at and everything you love looking at, okay? In the follicular phase, so in phase 2, this is when you're going to literally audit your house. I want you to be manic about it. Like iPad out, checklist, let's go. What do we need more of? What do we need less of? Where is this? Where is that? Where would I like it to be? Get really meticulous in the follicular phase. And then in the ovulatory phase and those 3 days after, execute it, get it done. Clear it all out. Now you could go room by room. It just depends on how you like to clean. Everyone has their own like way of doing it. Or you could do a digital declutter day by day. You just have to pick and choose, but do it in that window of time. Don't try to do it all over the place because then you're going to live in a house that's dirty and you're going to be like, oh my God, what happened? Right? Yeah. In the luteal phase, you're then going to step back and say, okay, what have I accomplished? What do I need more of? What do I need less of? What you'll notice is there's constantly 2 weeks of action, basically 2 weeks of reflection. And I think that if you can just wrap your head around that, you're good to go. Not because it's like an overly simplified way of doing it, but because I've tried doing it so nuanced before, it just leaves me upset. If you're trying to build in a new habit for a health goal, start with a micro habit and build on it. So a micro habit might be, I'm going to start my day with a smoothie every single day. And inside of the smoothie, I've been doing this, so that's why I'm using this as an example. Inside the smoothie, it's 1 banana, 4 strawberries, some colostrum. I've been popping in a prenatal. Oh, those are so hard to take. Like prenatals, I'm like, why is there so many of you? Putting in some, I've been splitting the capsule, doing the prenatal, blending it, and I have that before I have anything else.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I know the next step is like, once I've had my smoothie, I'm going to go walk the dog. Once I've walked the dog, I'm going to do my meditation and my journaling. Micro habits that you can stack, or habit stacking for lack of better words. And you should be well on your way to your goal.
So good. I love it. I love building on things. I agree that is the number one path to success, is when you can build on top of it. Now, for people that are in different scenarios with their cycles, I'm currently pregnant. People are maybe, in their, I can't even think of the phase of it right now. What is it called when you stop getting your period?
Menopause.
Menopause. People that are in menopause, that are no longer getting their period, or someone that doesn't have regular periods. How does this play into each of those different scenarios?
Gosh, everything. Well, pregnancy is its own box. So if you're pregnant, congratulations. One, happy for you. Number two, give yourself some grace. You're pregnant, be pregnant. Like, you rule the world, okay? We are your servants. That's how I feel when it comes to pregnancy. And I know it sounds kind of silly, but I think that society has told women they have to do this or be this way or show up like that. And I'm like, if you have the liberty to relax a little bit, please do. Like, sit in your pregnancy power and just let the belly pop. Like, I just love that for them. But for the women who have irregular cycles, the first thing you want to do is start tracking your basal body temperature, your cervical placement, and your cervical mucus. The reason we're doing this is because we need to confirm whether or not you are ovulating. If you're ovulating, we'll know where you are in your cycle, because basically ovulation is the only event in the menstrual cycle that actually matters. It's the main event. So if you're ovulating, if your cervical fluid, if you've never heard of cervical fluid, friends, it's basically when you wake up in the morning and let's say you go to tinkle, but then you notice like there's some discharge, that is the cervical fluid. Okay. If it looks like a raw egg white, yay, we're ovulating. If it doesn't, if it looks like more, let's say, lotion-like, then you're not ovulating. So you can literally look at your panties and see your cervical mucus and know kind of where you are. And if it looks more like lotiony, then you're approaching ovulation, or ovulation's just past. It just kind of depends. The reason you're tracking your cervix placement is because with your cervix specifically, it moves throughout the menstrual cycle, which a lot of people don't know. And it's one of my favorite markers for people who have irregular cycles and those who are menopausal. Your cervix still moves places. So the higher up your index finger can go into the vaginal canal and you can actually feel your cervix, the more, or the closer to ovulation you are. So if you were to take your finger and touch the tip of your nose versus touching your Cupid's bow, they're going to feel different. Your cervix has moved. So if it feels like your Cupid's bow, which is top of your lip, that means you're approaching ovulation. More often than not, you are ovulating, but you cross-reference with your cervical fluid. And then if it feels like the tip of your nose, it means you're not ovulating and you're not close to ovulating. So then obviously we don't really care. Like, I don't want to say we don't really care, but it just lets you kind of understand where you are and where you aren't. You're looking to be ovulating if you have an irregular cycle, because that way we can get your period back and kind of give you a good starting point. Now for menopause, that's a whole new world. Okay. And the reason I say it's a whole new world is because there's a lot of research coming out that is constantly changing about menopause. So it's like hard to give a concrete example, but I love to tell people who have gone through menopause. One, it's only a 24-hour event, even though I know you're screaming as I said that. I'm sorry, I don't make the rules, okay? It is only a 24-hour event. It might feel much longer than that because of the hormonal shifts, but the best thing about it is you can gauge your energy. So if you can just track your energy throughout the month as a menopausal woman, if you can track your basal body temperature, just like you would do with in a regular cycle, you do with menopause. If you're tracking the temperature, you'll see different rises and different highs and lows or a rise and fall. And often, like when you would normally ovulate as somebody who has a period, there's a spike just after you've ovulated. There's a dip just below you ovulate or just before ovulation, and then a spike just after ovulation. That could be an indication of like the changes that are happening throughout the month with I think it's just data from the body, but I have often heard menopausal women just like be like I'm done. I've done my time here. I'm good. Like I'm happy. But it's those who are perimenopausal trying to figure it out that are like more so going to benefit from what I just said in regards to tracking the basal body temperature, even to tracking their cervix placement and cervical mucus. That can be really beneficial. And I do have a fertility tracking guide on my website. I know I just threw a lot at you guys, but like it's all there too.
Yeah. But at the core, whether you're pregnant, menopausal, regular periods, irregular periods, you're going to have different areas of the month that you're going to have higher energy, lower energy, and you can use these different tactics and tools to be able to track that and help guide how you're feeling throughout the month. Is that correct? Or
with the exception of pregnancy. Pregnancy is the only exception to the rule, and that's because pregnancy uses a different type of estrogen. Okay. Now, my area of expertise is preconception.
Yeah.
Once you have conceived, I pass you to the proper people. Like I pass you over to the midwives and all of those people because there's a lot of different fluctuations and changes that happen. Yeah. And because there's a different type of estrogen, like most women don't know this, but there's 4 different types of estrogen in the body. So when you say estrogen, are we talking about just this type of estrogen or that estrogen? I know pregnancy estrogen and menopausal estrogen is different. So I always tell people who are pregnant, like, you really are in a league of your own, and not to like downplay it. It's just everyone, you experience different things throughout the month, but imagine what you're experiencing per the trimester as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, because it's not my expertise, I'm always like, I will let the
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's so interesting though. Okay, so other things that come into play are like mental health, anxiety, stress, all of those different kind of variables that come in and have to do with hormones. So talk to me about where they overlap, where they have nothing to do with each other, and how they can support each other.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm so excited.
The dance. I love the dance.
I love to talk about this specifically because I feel like people think being hormonal is bad, and I think it is such a good thing. But specifically, after you ovulate, research shares that the dip in estrogen is also associated with a dip in serotonin production. So the anxiety, the sassiness, the mood swings, the like, don't look at me, it's okay. It's actually 100% okay. It's natural. I'm not excusing bad behavior, okay? But what I am saying is you want to do the best you can to support your body. Just simply being aware that your serotonin levels are not going to be as high in the second half of your cycle because of a drop in estrogen, I find is really reassuring for a lot of people. The second thing I always tell people is if you know you're a moody bird, give yourself space and grace, but also effectively communicate. I can't tell you how important it is to effectively communicate with people on your team, whether that be in your personal life or your professional life. Just them knowing like, hey, this is where you are, or this is what's going on. Just saying like, hey, I'm actually not in the best headspace right now. I need a little extra help, or I need a little extra space, really does help. And so when it comes to menstrual moodiness, anxiety, I've dealt with a lot of people who have depression or premenstrual dysphoria disorder, also known as PMDD. They have so much peace just knowing that one thing. Now, I'm not going to just talk about the problem. Let me give you a solution, because we don't just talk about it. We got to be about it. Okay. Yeah. So with that being said, one of my favorite things to do is to recommend people take the drinkable multivitamin. I recommend it. The reason I recommended that is because it's literally formulated by somebody who has premenstrual dysphoria disorder, where she has these thoughts that are creeping in and making her feel less than amazing. Not only this, but often a mineral deficiency in the body can present itself not only as like a mood swing, but also migraines.
Mm,
And so if you know that like, oh, I have really bad migraines and I'm really moody, or like I'm emotional, like super sensitive, or I'm just kind of a bitch, because that's usually where I will fall. And I don't even try to like hide that. Like I will fall on the end of like very short, very snappy. That when I drink that consistently, my life is so much better because the mineral stores actually help with the shift in serotonin production, which actually helps produce more of that serotonin that we actually need. So there's a lot of people who do like adrenal cocktails or like your sleepy girl mocktails. Those are
yeah,
actually really great.
that's awesome.
Thank
Okay, so we have the multivitamin. Let's give a sleepy girl mocktail example. What is one of your favorite things to put in there?
So I personally just like I think the brand is called Moon Juice. Maybe it's called Moon Juice, but I do something called Magnesium. Instead of it's Magnesium OM at the end.
Yeah.
I just put that in some water and that's it. I know a lot of people like to do tart cherry juice. I personally am more of a wild blueberry juice girl. I find that so much better when it comes to so many things in life, but especially helping me get deeper sleep. So that's what I would recommend there. Another thing, ooh, hmm. No, I'm just gonna stop at magnesium because I just
Perfect.
really feel like it knocks you out. It'll help knock the kids out too. Just give them like a little bit of yours, like a sip, just a little sip of what you're drinking on. Sleep like a baby, literally.
Amazing. Love it. So, for someone that is feeling like they have so many moving pieces in their life, you guys have split custody, you have little kids coming in and out of the time, you're taking on the stepmom role alongside your business and everything else. Plus, then we have this anxiety, those BITCH moments, as you mentioned, and you're trying to balance all the things. Obviously, balancing our hormones helps that. But what are some other tangible ways that you just navigate mom life alongside trying to always improve your body and your health and your life and just really take each day as it comes?
So, wow. I love that question. If you hear screeching, that's my puppy right now. I'm sorry. But I think it's by creating something called daily standards. So there's a
Mm,
gentleman who is in the personal development world. His name is Derek E. Mills, and he came up with this concept of daily standards where basically there are 7 categories and you do 3 non-negotiable behaviors, habits, whatever for these categories. Now,
yeah,
naturally, I took it and made it my own because I was like, this is boring and not cute. So the acronym I recommend is called PERFECT, obviously. Okay. So
perfect.
P is P is for personal health and well-being. E is for energy and emotions. R is for relationships and family and friendships, of course. F is for finances. E is for environment and experiences. C is for career. T is for time. And I've
Mhm.
created daily standards for these, my top standards or my top non negotiables in each of these areas. And what you'll notice is that personal health and well being is at the forefront.
Mhm.
If you've got a 3-year-old who is having a meltdown, listen, my baby, Cam, she is like, wow. I'm like, why are you still screaming? Like, how do you scream so loud for so long? Are you okay? Like, what do you need? Right? It's as simple as saying, hey, we're going to go for a walk. Let me know when you're ready to go. And then I actually remove myself to make sure my nervous system's okay. And then
Yeah.
when she's calmed down, I go back to her, give her her hug, and then we go for that walk.
Yeah.
I know that that might seem so like small, but it's a way to not only have quality time with your child, but also to prioritize your health and well being because the tantrums impact you just as much as it impacts the child. You need
Mhm.
to know that you're safe just as much as your child needs to know that they're safe. And you can process on that walk.
Yeah.
If you're lucky and fortunate enough, maybe they know how to process through and explain why they did what they did. So I think that that is probably the number one way to balance it all. Because I don't think that like balancing life and hormones, there's over 50 hormones at play in the human body at any given time. Hormonal balance is just a cute marketing term, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Hormonal harmony is where it's at. And that's like where like everything is ebbing and flowing the right way. And so, also remember you're not always in control, but you are in charge.
Mm.
Okay, that was a lot. I'm sorry for the riff.
No, that is so good. So again, like you said, you're not always in control, but you are in charge. I think that's worth repeating. And I think that shows up into every different area of our life. And coming into a blended family, I am super curious to just know, what are some of the ways that you've made that work so well for you, in the sense of you're not always in charge of everything, but you are able to respond. You are able to react and create what you are able to create. What are some ways that you've made that work for you?
It's so funny. If you talked to me 6 months ago, I wouldn't have an answer for you because it is difficult. But
Yeah.
I do think what's really worked for me is being very honest with both my boyfriend and his ex-wife and saying, look, you all had time to acclimate to this. We're having children, and now the children are here, and this is life. I didn't have that. Is it called incubation period? Like I didn't have that like
Yeah.
really like acclimation. It
Yeah.
was my boyfriend and I went on our first date. I by chance met the kids literally the very next day. Like him and I went on our first date, we ran into each other and we knew like we were each other's people, but I didn't have kids, you
Yeah.
know? But also being very grounded and centered in who I am and my role.
Mm-hmm.
So they are my boyfriend's children. I am his support with the children. Therefore, I am support for the children. And me knowing my role has made things so much easier because, and no one's ever said to me, this is your role. It's just where I've chosen to be
Yeah.
because I respect his dynamic with his children, but I also respect his ex-wife as their mother. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, I never want to overstep. So prime example, his daughter was asking a few months ago to get her ears pierced. And at the time, she was 2. 2, almost 3. And he said, I don't care, go for it. Like, we'll take you. And so I said, hey, pump the brakes. Let me talk to her mom.
Yeah.
And he was like, what? I was like, you heard what I said. That is like a very sacred mother-daughter thing, in my opinion. So I'm going to ask her mom. I send her mom a text message. Her mom texts me back, thank you so much for asking. I really want to wait till she's 7 and I want to take her to do it. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Again, I know where I stand and I know what my standards are and boundaries. And so for me, it's just kind of understanding the respect. I also noticed a calendar is really good for the kids. So because of their age, my boyfriend and I started dating when his daughter was almost 2 and his son was like about 4.5. So I've been in the kid's life for a decent amount of time,
Yeah.
I noticed that his son was really struggling with the custody in the back and forth. And so I created a calendar to provide clarity and safety for his son. Now, this calendar is on our fridge. So there's days where D for daddy, M for mommy. He's only in kindergarten right now, but he does know his letters enough to like understand D, daddy, M, mommy.
Yeah.
So these are daddy days and these are mommy days. And again, I think because I'm so accepting of I'm supporting my boyfriend as he parents,
Yeah.
it's easy. Now, I'm very fortunate that he's very traditional. He's very traditional where like he likes to go into work, he likes to come home to dinner, food on the table, and then I'm in charge of like bath and bedtime. I'm also in charge of like this, but we had to learn our dynamic. And for me, because I entered his daughter's life when she was so young, it's been a really easy connection with his daughter, not a lot of work. Where his son, it's been a lot more difficult because he's very attached to his mom. And so I've had to actually observe him and see what makes him feel safe, what makes him feel supported, and what makes him feel scared. And, I'm a Black woman. His kids are blonde haired and blue eyed. They're great. But this was also their first time interacting with a Black woman in such an intimate capacity as well, because we all live together, you know? So I was navigating so many dynamics over the last year, as I would say, because we're almost 2 years in, probably year and a half.
Yeah.
Like, it's been very difficult, but my personal awareness of what's best for the kids and like being okay when they're like, we just want mommy. That's cool. You guys have mommy on mommy days. Do you guys want daddy right now? Okay, go give daddy a hug. And like also teaching my boyfriend, like, hey, you don't know this because you're not as intuitive, but what they need right now isn't you being distant on your phone. What they need is a hug and a snuggle, and like I have a very good relationship with my boyfriend, so I can like kind of call him out where I'm like, your kids need you, get off your phone, like I don't, again, I'm a boundaries person. I'm also very straightforward and sassy, so it's been a joy. It's not always a joy, but it's been a joy to like learn the dynamic and also set the tone. I'm not coming in where like the tone is set. I think it'd be different if the kids were older, but because they were so young, it's just such a blessing.
Oh my gosh, so many good takeaways. And one of the themes that I hear from our conversation before into all of this is really navigating like your own well-being and your nervous system, right? Because as you're navigating all these different things, if your nervous system wasn't able to keep up with these, little kid responses and transitions and changes and all the things that you're trying to navigate, it's going to be so much harder. And so really working on that, whether you're in that situation currently and you're like, yes, I need to feel better in this, or you're like, okay, I know life is going to throw me something. How do I set myself up for success so that I can be prepared for that? I think that is so good. So you gave us so many tangible takeaways. I want to thank you so much, Berry. This has been so great. I definitely hope everyone had their notebooks out. But if someone's getting off of this call and they're like, wow, that was so many good takeaways, and you were to tell them to just take one action today, one thing that they could do today, regardless of what cycle they're in or what phase of their cycle they're in, what is the one thing you would have them do?
Breathe. I know that seems so cliche and so like that wasn't actionable enough, but I promise if you could take 60 seconds right now to just connect back into your body, get out of your head, off of your devices, and just simply breathe, that is just going to make you feel better. That's it. Just taking the time to breathe. And honestly, I don't have anything else to say aside from that, because it really does come back to the nervous system regulation. So much of your hormonal health is linked to your nervous system. If you can control that, which breath does do, you're good.
So good. Before you leave us today, where can everyone find you, and what is a goal that you're currently working on or you're really excited about in this season of life?
Gosh, okay. So you can find me over on Instagram and TikTok at Berrion Berry. I'm sure it'll be linked somewhere. So don't worry too much. And then you can also find me on YouTube, Berrion Berry. My podcast is called Happily Hormonal, and a goal, gosh. I think my biggest goal right now is expanding what it is I do and how it is I do it. I've been the cycle syncing princess for so long, but I'm actually evolving as a human. I'm almost 30, friends. So I'm in my bombshell era. And the main goal is to become known as like the person who explains the science of femininity and really helping you understand not only your body, but your mind. So yeah, that's the goal.
So good. Thank you so much for your time, Berry.
Thank you.